Hello everyone. So this is an ancestor reading for those of you who feel like you have no family on earth and all your real family lives in the unseen. The one who raised themselves, the ones who were the odd kid out at every table and are only now realizing that their roots go straight up into spirit. And we open with the Eight of Wands as the ancestors stepping forward as your real family. And this doesn't feel subtle at all. This feels like synchronicities, repeating numbers, songs that arrive at the perfect timing, dreams that feel more like visits than dreams, and the same messages somehow finding you 3 different ways in the same week. Your ancestors are moving fast because they refuse to let you sit in the story that you are unwanted. They're rushing your field with this overwhelming sense of presence, wanting you to know that you are seen, that you are claimed, that you belong. And some of you are going to feel that as literal physical energy in your body, like maybe tingles or like heat or like your heart suddenly speeding up when you talk to them. Because what they're showing me here is that some of you have carried loneliness for so long that it doesn't even feel like loneliness anymore. It just feels like reality. It feels like the way things are. Like everybody else got a family and somehow you missed the line. Like everybody else got people that they could call, people that they could lean on, people who showed up. And you learned very young not to expect that. What these ancestors keep showing me is that they are trying to interrupt that story. Not because your pain wasn't real, not because what happened to you wasn't real, but because the conclusion you drew from it may not be. Some of you learned that being unsupported meant you were unloved, that being overlooked meant you were unwanted, that being alone meant nobody was there. And the energy around this card feels like your ancestors rushing in to challenge that. Because for some of you, they have been around you your entire life, long before you knew how to look for signs, long before you knew what an ancestor altar was, long before you ever called on them. There is a feeling here of people who have been trying to reach you for years, trying to comfort you, trying to guide you, trying to remind you that your story is bigger than the people who failed you in the 3D. The Eight of Wands almost feels like family trying to catch up to someone who became convinced they were abandoned. And the Three of Cups is the loneliness and abandonment pattern they are addressing. And it's such a specific picture of being the third wheel at the party. Always close to the joy, but not quite inside it. Being the emotional support friend that everyone cries to and then doesn't invite to the actual celebration. Being the kid who watched siblings or cousins be chosen while you floated around carrying plates and fixing vibes. And over time, that teaches you in a really quiet and brutal way that you are the glue, but never the guest of honor. That you hold space for everyone else's connection and then go home alone. And what makes this card so emotional in this position is that the Three of Cups is supposed to be a card of belonging, community, friendship, celebration, being welcomed into the circle. So seeing it here really tells me that this is exactly where the wound lives. For some of you, the deepest pain wasn't what happened. It was watching while other people receive what you really needed. Watching other people get chosen, watching other people have support, watching other people have somewhere to land, and wondering what was wrong with you. wondering why it always seemed easier for everyone else, wondering why you were always the one standing just outside the circle. And what your ancestors are showing me is that this pattern did not begin with you, but it also doesn't end with you. Because I honestly feel part of the lesson here is understanding that family was never meant to exist in only one form. Some people arrive on Earth and immediately find family in their parents or their siblings and cousins. And for others, family arrives in layers. It could be a friend or a teacher or a partner, a community, an ancestor, a guide, a spiritual connection that becomes so steady it starts feeling more reliable than some of the people in the physical world for you. And for those of you this reading is for, I don't think your ancestors want you measuring your worth by how well your earthly family showed up. I think they want you measuring it by the fact that you are here at all. Because your existence means an entire line of people survived long enough for you to arrive. And I keep getting this feeling that some of you were never meant to learn belonging from the people immediately around you. You were meant to spend your life discovering that belonging is much bigger than that. That family is bigger than that. And that love is bigger than that. And while I don't feel that anyone would willingly choose the pain that came with this lesson, I do feel these ancestors are showing me that there has always been something walking beside you. Even when you couldn't feel it, even when you didn't believe it, even when all the evidence in front of you seemed to say otherwise, your line is stepping forward to show you that you belong to something. And you always have. The Nine of Wands shows how that has been sitting in your body and your life. And this is the card of the bruised but still standing survivor. The person who learned to live on high alert. The person who learned to run on not enough sleep. The ones who trust slow and keep one eye open. You might notice you are always scanning a room, always waiting for the other shoe to drop, building these invisible fortresses around your heart because you have been dropped or forgotten or talked about so many times that your nervous system just expects it. And even when good people come in with good intentions, your body is already bracing, already rehearsing the goodbye. So you move through life exhausted, resilient as hell, but tired from carrying the whole thing by yourself. Next is the Magician, and this is the gift or the talent that they pass to you on purpose. And honestly, this card makes me emotional because after everything we just talked about, the loneliness, the abandonment, the feeling of standing outside the circle, your ancestors are showing me that they did not pass down only wounds. They passed down power too. The Magician is the alchemist, the bridge builder, the one who learns how to create something out of what is available instead of waiting for perfect circumstances. Your ancestors are showing me a line of people who knew how to make a way where there seemed to be no way. People who could adapt, people who could survive, people who could read a room, understand human nature, and turn very little into enough. And I think some of you underestimate how much of that lives inside of you. Because when you've spent most of your life feeling unwanted, it's easy to focus on what was missing. But your ancestors keep pulling my attention toward what is present. Your intuition, creativity, your ability to connect dots other people miss, your ability to learn, to heal, to reinvent yourself, to keep becoming. And the Magician is the card that says you already have more resources than you realize. And for some of you, that resource is your spiritual connection itself, the way signs find you, the way your dreams speak, the way you seem to know things before they happen, the way spirit keeps finding ways to communicate with you. And for others, this gift looks more practical, maybe the ability to build community or the ability to make people feel seen, the ability to create beauty or to turn pain into wisdom that helps someone else. Your ancestors are not showing me someone who is broken. They're showing me someone who forgot how powerful they are. And they want you to remember that the same line that passed down the wound also passed down the medicine. And everything sent to destroy you, you can and have alchemized into something that will empower you. The Eight of Pentacles is what they're asking you to do differently than what they did. And this is so important because your ancestors are showing me a line of people who often spent their energy surviving, fixing a crisis, holding a family together, putting out fires, carrying responsibilities that never seem to end. But the Eight of Pentacles says they do not want all of your energy disappearing into survival the way theirs often did. They want you building something that belongs to you, a craft, a calling, a practice, a life. They keep showing me someone who pours enormous amounts of energy into taking care of everyone else while their own dreams sit quietly in the corner waiting for attention. There is a life that keeps tapping you on the shoulder, asking to be taken seriously, and your ancestors are asking you to devote yourself to that. Not because achievement is the point or because productivity makes you worthy, but because creating something that belongs to you is part of how this cycle breaks. Instead of pouring all your devotion into people who cannot meet you, they want you pouring some of that devotion into your own life, into your own growth and your own becoming. The Eight of Pentacles feels like your ancestors saying, we survived, now build. We endured, now create. We carried, now become. And the Ten of Cups is how your ancestors are actively protecting and guiding you. And this is such a tender card to see here, because most people look at the Ten of Cups and think of family, home, belonging. The picture so many people wish they had growing up. And yet here it is sitting in the ancestor protection position for someone who may have spent most of their life feeling disconnected from family altogether. And that feels really important to me. I feel so much love from them for you. Yeah, this feels really important because your ancestors are not showing me this card as some distant reward that you have to earn one day. They're showing me this card as something they are already trying to build around you. Your ancestors are literally protecting your path toward belonging, not in a punishing or controlling way, more in the way a loving family might steer a child away from something that looks safe but isn't. There is a feeling here of them refusing to let you settle for relationships that recreate the same wound. So, yeah, sometimes they let connections, friendships fall away. Sometimes they make certain connections feel uncomfortable enough that you can no longer pretend everything is fine. Sometimes they close doors that looked promising on paper but would have required you to abandon yourself to stay there. And I know that doesn't always feel loving in the moment. Sometimes it feels like another loss or disappointment or another person walking away and heartbreak. But what they're showing me is that they are trying to guide you towards spaces where your presence is celebrated instead of merely tolerated. Toward people who genuinely want you there. Toward relationships where you don't have to earn your place every day. And for some of you, that may start with one person, one friendship or a mentor or a community or an online space where you finally feel understood. Because what I keep hearing is that family is not always about quantity. Sometimes family is the first place your nervous system learns it can finally rest. And For those of you this reading is for, I think your ancestors are trying to teach your body what safety feels like. Not obligation or guilt, not constantly proving your worth, not shrinking yourself so everyone else stays comfortable, but warmth, safety, and belonging. The feeling of being able to exhale, the feeling of not having to perform for love, the feeling of knowing that if you disappeared for a few days, someone would notice, the feeling of being welcomed instead of evaluated. And I think some of you have wanted that for so long, you've almost stopped believing that it exists, but your ancestors have not stopped believing in it for you. Not for 1 second. And the Two of Pentacles shows the life that opens when you allow your ancestors to become a part of the support system. When you stop carrying everything by yourself. When you stop acting like you have to survive every hard season alone. When you stop treating yourself like an orphan in a universe that has been trying to support you the entire time in synchronistic ways, because that's what I keep feeling here. Not that your pain wasn't real or that people didn't let you down, but that somewhere along the way, loneliness became your identity. And your ancestors are gently trying to separate those two things here. You experienced loneliness, but loneliness is not who you are. You experienced abandonment, but abandonment is not your destiny. The Two of Pentacles feels like someone finally setting down one of the bags they've been carrying for years. Not all at once. Not dramatically, but just enough to breathe again. Just enough to realize that they don't have to hold everything by themselves. You get to balance grief and joy, your solitude and your connection, your work and your rest, your healing and your living. Because right now, I feel some of you are so used to surviving that you've forgotten what support feels like. And your ancestors keep showing me someone whose nervous system is exhausted from constantly scanning for rejection, constantly preparing for loss or waiting for the next disappointment. But when you begin trusting that something is walking beside you, something's going to really shift. You're going to stop reacting to every old ghost. And you're going to stop assuming every silence means abandonment. You're going to stop interpreting every delay as rejection. And life begins feeling a little lighter. Not perfect, but just lighter and more manageable and more flexible and more alive. Almost like you're finally working with the current instead of fighting it. And the Emperor closes us out as one grounded way to lean on them this week. And I love that this is the final card, because after all this talk about belonging and support and spiritual family, your ancestors are ending with empowerment. The Emperor is not asking you to hand your power away. Your ancestors are not asking you to become dependent on them. They're not asking you to wait for signs before you make decisions. They're not asking you to shrink into passivity. They're asking you to remember your authority, to remember who you are, to remember that you carry this lion inside of you. The move here is structure. One promise to yourself that you can actually keep. One boundary that you keep negotiating. One practice that becomes sacred. Maybe that's lighting a candle or putting your hand on your heart every morning and taking a few minutes to connect with them. Or maybe it's protecting your creative work or protecting your peace. But whatever it is, this energy here feels like your ancestors helping you build trust with yourself. Because every time you keep a promise to yourself, you reinforce the message that you matter. Every time you honor your own boundary, you reinforce the message that your needs matter. Every time you choose yourself, you reinforce the message that your life matters. And I think that's what these ancestors have been trying to teach all along. Not that you need saving, but that you deserve support. Not that you're powerless, but that you were never meant to carry everything alone. So as we weave all these cards together, Your ancestors are moving quickly to reach you. They're pulling at the root of that lifelong loneliness. They're honoring the survivor your body had to become. They're reminding you of the alchemist that lives inside of you. They're asking you to pour your devotion into your own life instead of into people who cannot meet you. And they're guiding you toward real belonging, real safety, real home. And underneath all of it, the message feels more simple. You are not alone. You are not forgotten. You are not an accident. You belong to something older than your loneliness, and you're the one in this line who gets to build a different kind of home. So, my name is Mason. I really hope this reading resonated with you or was healing in any type of way. And if you did enjoy this reading, and if you're interested in joining me here on my journey, I would really appreciate it if you subscribed. So, I love you so much. Bye.